What's happening, everybody? Welcome. This is Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio. And today, Andrew and I are talking about training under confusion and maybe even training for confusion.
With confusion.
With confusion, near confusion.
In and around.
Actually, this all makes far more sense than they probably realize based on what we're going to talk about. If you're new to the show, you picked a weird one to come in on, but welcome to everyone who is returning. Thank you, of course. Thank you for your support. I'm Jeremy Lesniak, founder here at Whistlekick. Andrew Adams, my wonderful part-time co-host. And esteemed. You are esteemed. And what do we do at Whistlekick? We do stuff for traditional martial artists and the traditional martial arts, including the show, which falls under the heading of connecting, educating, and entertaining those of you out there who love traditional martial arts. That's me. That's you. It's probably you too. If you're listening, know that there is a video version of this episode and you get to see my television. As well as us, our shining faces with professional lighting. It took us way too long to set up today. All right. A couple other quick housekeeping things before we really dig in. If you want to support what we do, go to whistlekick.com, check out all the stuff, use the code podcast15 to make a purchase. Don't forget you can leave reviews, share episodes, anything that seems like it makes sense to help us out, we appreciate. And of course, we've got a Patreon, patreon.com/whistlekick. It's the last thing I put up on Patreon. I did a video episode last week. Did you watch it?
Nope.
You didn't see it yet?
I haven't had a chance.
Okay. I don't even remember what it was about. And now I'm really embarrassed.
That's okay. It's almost like we do at Whistlekick. We do a lot.
We kind of do a lot of stuff. And all right, so let's dig in. So training under confusion. Now the irony of this is that I am sleep deprived right now. Not because of any wonderful reasons. You know, I wasn't like up late training. I wasn't out late hanging out with friends.
We didn't plan this episode
We did
around
not
you being
plan
confused
this at all. I just woke up at like 3:45 and could not get back to sleep, which is not a common occurrence for me. So I'm exhausted, and it's fitting because when we train, when we think about training, and when we think about the environments in which we're going to utilize our training, whether that's competition or self-defense, we tend to forget that we're not always at our best.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm just going to be able to, or, you know, I always perform better under pressure. What about when you don't? What about when you've had 6 cups of coffee? I think I'm at 3. When you've had 6 cups of coffee and your brain doesn't work right? What about when you get mugged coming out of the bar at 2 a.m. and you know what? You were going to take an Uber because you've had too many to drink.
Yeah. Or even if you yourself are not impaired, but someone gets you in a position and you get stunned and dazed.
Yeah.
And you're not sure what's going on.
And honestly, the one that for me led to our talking about this and setting this up as an episode, what about the quintessential group combat or potential combat situation of a bar? Somebody hits you over the back of the head, you know, bottle, whatever, and you turn around and you don't know who it was.
Exactly. Yep.
When we train, we tend to train in very controlled environments. Mm-hmm. And very few schools, in fact, very few of the schools I've ever trained at have done anything to address this idea that, let's face it, statistically, you're probably not going to be at your best when these things happen.
Yeah. I mean, also, most schools, when they train these types of scenarios, the person that is they're getting into a confrontation with is directly in front of them, and I get to see them coming.
Right.
Most people, if they're smart, if you want to be a bad guy, don't come at people from the front. Like, right. They're going to come from behind you. So you won't necessarily know, especially if it's in a crowded bar, who it was that did whatever it was.
Right. When I think about the drills that I've done where there's been a little bit of confusion, it's been around this idea, you don't know who's an attacker and who isn't. But there's no consequence if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
Right? If somebody, let's take that scenario, I get smacked on the back of the head, you know, I'm in some social setting, and I turn around and there's 4 people there. Do I just walk away? Probably not. That's leaving a threat on the table.
Yep.
And if someone's just going to haul off and punch me, they're probably going to do it again. We're not talking about being in school and somebody, shoves you in the hallway or up against the locker where, yeah, maybe your ego's bruised, but you're probably not going to get seriously injured by letting that go. Mm-hmm. But in this scenario, you could. So do I just pick the one that seems most likely and haul off and punch them? Because what if
you're wrong?
What if I'm wrong and now I've added
now you've got 2 assailants
or more?
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you addressed this in any of your training?
We in the training that I've done, we have not in our school. It's not something that's talked about often, although we could certainly correct that. The one place that I've seen it done is when I was in Scotland. I visited Ian Abernathy's dojo. He's only a couple hours from Glasgow, down just across the border in England. And during the class, there were, I don't know, maybe 25 or 30, no, maybe not even that, 15 to 20 people in the class. And he had 4 people line up with their eyes closed, spaced apart. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the people, so there were, 15 or so people, kind of spread apart around the people that had their eyes closed, and everyone had sparring gear on, and the person with their eyes closed had to keep their eyes closed until they were touched.
Yeah.
And it could have been a push from behind, it could have been a push from the front, could have been a kick or a punch, anywhere. And once they got touched, then they could open their eyes and they would have to defend themselves.
Sure.
And as an outsider, when I was watching this happen, it was really interesting to see how people's reactions were when they opened their eyes. And then he had me be one of the 4 with the eyes closed. And, I felt a push from behind and opened my eyes, and I had 6 people on me.
Yeah.
All that immediately, as soon as I opened my eyes, started coming at me. And I had to very quickly survey the situation, like what's going on, who is around me and is going to be attacking. And it's a different scenario that most people are not used to. It was I was surprised at how uncomfortable I felt. And these people were, I just met them that day, but I knew they weren't there to really hurt me. But if they really had been there to hurt me, it was a very difficult situation.
Yeah. Now add the compounding factor. What if in that drill, and maybe for those of you watching or listening, this is another layer to throw on top of that. What if when you open your eyes, you have to determine whether or not the touch was a threat or not?
Yep.
Because I think that really gets to the heart of it. And I'm going to keep going back to the bar because it's the most cliche scenario and the one that I think most people can wrap their head around. If we take that scenario and I'm at the bar and I feel an elbow upside the back of my head. Was that someone elbowing me in the head, or someone standing there and I'm a shorter guy, somebody's taller, and somebody gets bumped and now they lean.
Yep.
Or I'll keep it on camera. They lean and now I've got an elbow in the back of my head. Now if I turn and I swing or put a bottle upside somebody's face, there's a fight.
Yeah.
Right.
When it was unintentional.
Right.
Correct.
So I think when I think about this, if we take this subject, I think we can boil down the training to a few things. Prevention, determination, extraction.
Yeah.
The prevention is pretty obvious. Don't go to stupid places with stupid people and do stupid things.
Yep.
Okay. If you're going to go anywhere, be aware. Mm-hmm. Right? If you're sitting down at a meal,
be mindful.
Be mindful. If you're in a bar, pay attention to who's there. If there's something going on. I was out at dinner with a friend on Friday night, and we were outside. And this was in Burlington, and people were passing by. And there were a couple scenarios that could have turned. Mm-hmm. I wasn't eating during them.
Yeah, you made sure to not be eating.
I was not eating.
Yep.
My fork was down. I was very quietly paying attention because I knew at a moment's notice I may need to extract. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've got the the supervision, the paying attention of what's going on, and the willingness to get out of there.
Yeah.
What's the number one thing that's going to keep someone from extracting themselves from a situation?
Having someone else with them. It would be my guess.
I would say ego.
Oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
So if we take the scenario where,
Yeah.
again, was that elbow to the back of my head intentional or not? I turn around and there isn't somebody about ready to connect with a second strike. I have a very, very quick response to determine, can I safely extract?
Mm-hmm.
And I think within the context of self-defense, we preach extraction up until the point that the altercation begins, up until violence happens.
Yeah.
And then we tend to preach, you get in there and do the damage you need to do so you can extract.
So then get out.
But what about this scenario where I lose the fight because I get elbowed or punched, but I can still safely extract?
Yeah. Yeah. You still leave. You still get the
I
opportunity.
still get the opportunity to leave. Maybe my pride's hurt. We forget that every time we engage, there's the opportunity to get really hurt. And when you have someone discuss, oh, well, my training and this, and I've never... That's ego. And if ego is in the way, it becomes really difficult to separate. Now, let's take what you said. This, if somebody else is there. Okay. Now, a number of my friends have been at meals with me, and I've told them, we may need to leave.
Yeah.
There's a situation over there that I'm watching, and it could go south. And I will phrase that differently depending on who I'm with.
Who's you're with, yeah.
But most of my friends at this point understand I am not an alarmist, and I would rather be prepared. The number of times I have had to leave a situation is very, very small. The number of situations I have observed is thousands.
Yeah. Because you're vigilantly watching to see what's going on. I'm the same way. When my wife and I go out to dinner, she doesn't ask me what seat I want. She knows what seat I want. Yeah. I want to see the door.
There's a responsibility in watching that. And there's something to be said for people who are willing to watch the door versus people who just trust everyone around them to not, stab them in the back. And both are good. I trust the people around me to not stab me in the back. But you ever had someone that you consider to be a good friend let you down?
Well, it happens.
So that means that the people around you could not be who they represent themselves to be? Oh, okay. So we know that paying attention is important, that we have to do that. So the extraction part's pretty obvious. The avoidance part is pretty obvious. Let's talk about that determination part, because that's the heart of it. That's what makes this scenario different from every other scenario we talk about. The ability to quickly determine threat level and respond appropriately if necessary, especially when things are not ideal. Now, the situation we tend to talk about is around adrenaline.
Yeah.
And you're really hyped up. What do you do? What do most schools seem to do when considering that?
Honestly, I think most schools don't consider it.
How about most schools that do? Because I would agree that was a bad. I phrased that poorly. The schools that do, how do they address it?
I don't know that they do, because I don't know how those schools address it.
Okay.
Because the schools I've trained in don't.
Most of the schools that I'm familiar with, if they're going to address training for situations where adrenaline is raised, it's experience. It's instituting drills where when adrenaline rises, you have come to expect it. The adrenaline spike is not quite as great, and your ability to think through it and with it is greater.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's the same kind of thing. I could imagine, if I had a school, as I'm talking through this, I would absolutely pull together high ranks and we would do this. Drunk training. Not everybody drunk.
Yeah.
And not everybody, hammered.
Yeah.
But I could imagine, you and I, we've got enough training, and I don't know if you're a big drinker, but I suspect that where your lines
Where
are.
my limits are. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, I know if I had like one like pint of like really hoppy, like 8% beer,
Yep. Yep.
that's all I would need to take that first step. I would be, my reaction time would be off. I wouldn't be driving.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good way to express it. And so if you and I and maybe a handful of others supervised by an instructor who's completely sober.
Sure.
I think that's an important part to say. To do a little bit of training and to show how quickly things can go awry. Now, I don't think you're doing the same kind of drills. I don't think that you're doing reaction drills where somebody's going to get popped.
Yeah.
I think you're doing these determination drills, kind of like what you talked about at Abernathy School. This idea, friend or foe, is this a threat or not? Did you ever play like those arcade shooting games in the 80s?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And quite often you had to make a quick determination. Is this an enemy or is this someone you're supposed to save?
Yeah.
And you get it wrong and
You lose points.
You lose points, but in life you get it wrong and
You just created another enemy.
created a situation that didn't need to exist.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we spend a bunch of time trying to come up with drills around this because we haven't done them.
Yeah.
But I think what we want to leave people with is this idea that it's a question that needs to be asked. And I'm pretty sure that we've got some listeners, some viewers out there who have drilled in this way.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I would be surprised if we didn't.
I would love to have you folks write in, let me know, jeremy@whistlekick.com. And maybe we'll do a follow-up. Maybe we'll bring some of you on the show. We can do some things around that. But let's take it back to those 3 points. Prevention, as with any self-defense situation.
Don't get in those situations.
Okay. And there's an added layer. Hey, I know I'm going to have a couple drinks tonight. I know I'm going out with this person who seems a lot more likely to get into problems than other people. And now they want to go to this bar where I know it's a little bit more likely to go down. I'm going home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that can be really difficult to do under the reality of alcohol. Alcohol does not help us make good decisions. We know this. I mean, it is the most cliche thing imaginable.
I mean, no matter how much of a better karaoke singer it makes you, it doesn't necessarily make you a better fighter.
And it's only better for you.
Correct.
I don't know that anyone has ever said, man, as that person drinks more, they sing better. I've said it about myself. I've never said it about someone else. The extraction piece, the willingness to suspend ego and get out of there, because I've said it before, I will continue to say it. The only way you win a fight is to avoid it. And the point at which someone throws a punch at you, even if they connect, that is not when the fight starts. The fight starts when you choose to respond with violence.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get out safely, you get out safely. When do you fight? When you can't. And so you've got the piece in the middle as you try to figure out what makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything we should add?
No, I mean, the only thing I would add is when I was in England at Sensei Abernathy's dojo, my wife told me afterwards that I closed my eyes and there were like 2 people around me and the other, 10 or so students were around the other people. And Ian Abernathy went and put 6 people on me.
Okay. Wanted to mess with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's great. And that's what it should be.
Absolutely.
Because you opened your eyes and you panicked.
Correct.
Right? You had that moment. And I think anything that induces that panicky response, I think is critical. You know what we didn't do, and I think we should before we wind down here? We've talked about alcohol as an element of confusion. We've talked about not being able to determine threat. And we offhandedly at the top of the show mentioned some of these other things. So let's go through them so people understand what we're talking about.
Okay.
Tired.
Absolutely.
I do not want to get into a situation right now. My ability to process information due to sleep deprivation is significant.
Yeah. If I went to slap you right now, you would probably not see it coming.
I definitely wouldn't see it coming. Andrew's referencing a joke I made on First Cup this morning that he may need to slap me because I'm tired.
Yeah.
And he was really looking forward to slapping. Let's just say there were some messages exchanged.
Maybe in the outtakes.
Maybe we'll put that on Patreon. If you want to see Andrew slap me, you've got to be in the whatever tier on Patreon. Oh,
another incentive to join Patreon.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. So we've got tired.
Yep.
We've got intoxicated. We've got just general lack of understanding of who is what and where and what's going on.
Being actually dazed, like someone actually hitting you and being physically like, oh my god, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, what happened?
That is very significant, and it's something that I think is really hard to train for.
You're right.
Unless you're training at an intense level with people that you trust.
Mm-hmm.
I've had my bell rung a couple times, and I'm all but useless.
Yeah,
it has not happened enough that I'm inoculated to that.
Yeah.
But I know people who are. I know people who have been in the ring plenty of times or spar, pretty close to full contact, and they shake it off. They're like,
yeah,
and that's one I'm not going to train. What else do we have? How about awareness being elsewhere? I could imagine. You mentioned being in a situation with other people.
Mm-hmm.
What if one of those other people is your child, a young child?
Yeah.
And, there's something going on and you don't know if your kid's safe. I don't have kids, but I've heard parents speak pretty definitively that you get tunnel vision.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally see that.
Anything that we're missing?
I don't think so.
On that list? Okay. There might be one or two things, but I think that's enough for you to get the idea. So take this concept, run with it, and help us build on it. Okay. If you like what we do, remember you got a lot of ways you can support. We've got the Patreon. We've got merch. We've got equipment. We've got books. You can leave reviews. You can tell people about the show. You could, once we had someone put the logo on the back of their car. I mean, the things that people have done in support of Whistlekick are pretty cool. And I'm game for anything that you think would help us. I'm open to it. Thank you. If you have a topic suggestion, feedback, guest suggestion, email me, jeremy@whistlekick.com. If you've got a question for the Q&A episodes that we do every few weeks, email this guy, andrew@whistlekickmartialartsradio.com. Our social media is @whistlekick. We're all over the place there. We do newsletters you can sign up for with some pretty cool content. Actually, we've worked really hard to make sure that the open rate goes up, meaning that we're doing something right, that people are liking it. So we've reinvested in that. And I think that's it for now. So until next time, train hard, smile, and have a great day. That was really good. We nailed that.